How would you gauge, I guess, where infrastructure is going in the state?
Well, obviously, you know that we have not come to a resolution on our roads, so that to me, to us as economic developers, was a setback in terms of it brings not only investment when you build it, but it also obviously makes transportation easier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I just found out a good piece of news that on the broadband front, and somebody's going to come and talk to us, the UP has been fully connected with broadband, and I want to know how they did that because I would like to take that model and bring it to some of our other rural communities. As far as particularly wastewater treatment is concerned, the city of Grand Rapids is obviously building a big biodigester to take care of it. On the smaller communities, it's really on a one-on-one, onesie-twosie basis, if you will. So if you get a project, often then it leads to an increase in the capability and building it. But we're also trying to help particularly our smaller communities identify the issue ahead of time and then see how can we even fund it, right? Because it's a funding issue.
Where you mentioned about retention and growth being 80%, 20% being attraction. Of that, in general, that 20% where it's attraction, do you lean on the strengths and the sectors that are already here, or in general, has it been a look to diversify Western Michigan?
Well, the strength of the region used to only be manufacturing, right? But today, it's also food processing and agribusiness, it's IT. In fact, we're going to get another foreign IT company next year. They just told us we won over 2 other competitors. Can't announce it yet, but, and then, of course, health and life sciences. So when we go to specific trade shows or countries, we look at what the strength is, right? So we don't, if we go to the MDM show, which is a medical device show in Anaheim, that's placed directly to the strength in that device, right? Or we may go to a show in Chicago that plays directly to the strength of manufacturing. That doesn't mean that if somebody shows up who doesn't fit into those 4 buckets, we don't take, right? That would be kind of silly. But I would say over the last 20 years, with the advent of medical mile, we really have a diversified bucket of businesses, right? It used to be all manufacturing, but if you look at the projects and if you look at the region now, we really are a very diversified economy amongst those 4 buckets, plus obviously services. Fastest growing really, it's what always amazes me is our IT sector is growing a lot. When a few years ago when we needed to do our website, I like to tell the story, we had to go all the way to Denver to find an appropriate vendor. Well, now the vendor is right around the corner from us, right here in Grand Rapids. So I think we're doing a pretty good job regionally to diversify the economies.
Broad statement from you, if you can. 3 years ago they said the recession should be here by now. The recession is not here. Is the recession coming? And how is Grand Rapids and West Michigan going to ride it out?
So the first comment, and I love this, I wish I would have invented it, that economists predicted 5 out of the last 4 recessions. So, we're not good at that. And again, it's policy mistakes that affect that. And that's one of the things we're starting to think about at the Institute is what's the implication 2 years from now to the workforce. But if a recession comes, and I'm not sure I'm disagreeing with Birgit necessarily, but in some ways, it may reduce some of the pressure for companies as things slow down a little bit, but that may come from just returning to trend too. And so, we have, Birgit talked a lot about demographics and other things. The reality is that we're going to have to rely on productivity and technology to meet the needs of increasing, demand from goods and services from companies.
Can you elaborate on what you said in your presentation about basically the environment now is not to lower or raise, but just to kind of maintain interest rates?
Yeah, so right now, if you look at inflation and you look at the changing rates, it's the cost of capital is really close to 0, so it makes lots of sense to invest. I would argue, and I think there was something in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week, that by lowering rates, you've taken away some of the benefits of the Fed's ability to respond. So you've taken some powder from their keg, as it were. You know, from a fixed income standpoint, higher rates are a little bit better. The dilemma with higher rates is, of course, it affects the cost of the deficit and those sorts of things. So, but I think right now, stability is probably the most important thing that can be introduced into the market.